The hum of machines was soft, nearly musical, a sterile lullaby echoing through the suite. Sunlight filtered in through sheer linen drapes, warming the corners of the private hospital room. Everything reeked of money leather furniture, imported, orchids on the side table, and the faint citrus scent of Amara's favorite essential oils misting from a silver diffuser. Amara lay motionless on the bed, her face a mask of serene vulnerability. Thick gauze wrapped her eyes, the sterile white a sharp contrast to the angry bruising peeking out beneath. A faint beep from the cardiac monitor punctuated each passing second. She could feel Marcus before she heard him. His Italian loafers clicked against the marble floor with the precision of someone who valued appearance over presence. He stopped at the edge of the bed and sighed, long and heavy. Not worried, not hopeful, tired. Double quote, still asleep. The question was rhetorical, his voice low, smooth. He was good at that, sounding like he cared. The chair creaked as he sat down beside her. She focused on her breathing, steady, subtle, convincing. There was a long silence. Then he spoke, his voice no longer honeyed for her benefit. "I can't keep doing this, Amara. I won't." Her fingers twitched slightly under the blanket. "If this is permanent, you're really blind, then we're done. You can't even sign your name anymore. What good is a blind CEO?" He chuckled, quiet, bitter. "What good is a blind wife?" Amara's heart thudded once, hard. She forced it down, flattened her face into sleep again. "You were sharp, brilliant. People bowed when you walked into a room. But now, you couldn't even pour your own damn coffee." He stood, pacing now, agitated. "Finally, I stayed for the optics, the media circus, the sympathy play. But I can't babysit you for the rest of my life. I'm not that guy." He paused, then softer, almost kindly. "You probably won't even remember this conversation. Not with the meds they've got you on." The door opened. A nurse peeked in. "Everything okay in here, Mr. Steele?" Marcus turned, all charm again. "Yeah, she's still asleep. Just sitting with her." The door closed behind the nurse. Another sigh, and then footsteps fading. Amara waited. 5 seconds. 10 dot. Then slowly, very slowly, her eyes fluttered open under the bandages. Not too much. Just enough to see through the tiny, hidden slit she'd left between layers of gauze. The world was shadowy, blurred, but not dark. And she was not blind. She never had been. Not after the 3rd surgery, at least. The swelling had gone down days ago. But she hadn't told anyone. Not even the doctors, because she needed to know. Now she did. A soft, cold smile curled at the corners of her lips. Her husband, Marcus Steele, Arica's sweetheart entrepreneur, her partner in every magazine cover, every staged gala photo had just shown her who he really was. And that was the moment Amara Vale stopped being a patient. She became a predator. The hospital room had gone quiet again, but Amara S.'s mind was anything but still. Beneath the bandages and behind the steady rise and fall of her chest, her thoughts churned sharp, controlled, calculating. That voice she had just heard, cold and so unmistakably Marcus, still echoed through her bones. For 10 years she had built an empire with him by her side, or so she had thought. But now, alone in this soft white tomb of gauze and beeping machines, she realized she'd built it in spite of him. Amara hadn't always been powerful. Born in Lagos and raised between Nigeria and Atlanta, she grew up in a house that prized intellect over indulgence. Her father, a a stoic engineer, had instilled in her a love for building things from scratch, while her mother, sharp, organized, relentless, taught her to command a room without ever raising her voice. Amara had launched her first app out of a cramped studio apartment with spotty Wi-Fi and no AC, pulling 20-hour days with blistered fingers and a fire in her belly. It was Marcus who used to bring her food in those early years. Back then, he'd sit behind her as she coded, massaging her shoulders, whispering encouragements, telling her she was going to change the world. They met at a startup pitch event. She was raw, brilliant, underestimated. He was polished, well-connected, a senior analyst at a VC firm. He believed in her before the investors did. Their marriage had once been a storm of passion and ambition. Late-night ramen and shared spreadsheets. Marcus pushed her to dream bigger, to trust herself, to demand more. When her company exploded into $1 billion force in the AI space, he left his job, telling everyone he was going to support his wife's vision full-time. At first, it felt like a fairy tale. They traveled, posed for magazines, headlined conferences as the power couple of the tech world. But slowly, quietly, the dynamic shifted. At first, Amara chalked it up to stress. Marcus began controlling their finances, brushing it off as something he could handle better with his background. He inserted himself into meetings he had no business attending, started using words like "our company" when talking to press. Over the years, his admiration turned to something called resentment, perhaps masked in charm. His jabs became sharper, always dressed as jokes. He'd smile in public but withdraw in private. He no longer touched her like he used to. And when he did, it was out of habit, not hunger. Amara tried to confront him once gently, carefully. He'd deflected, laughed it off, and made her feel like she was overanalyzing things, too, in her head. Gaslighting, she would later realize. The turning point came 2 months ago. Late one night, she passed his study and overheard him on the phone. His voice was low, intimate, unfamiliar. Asterisk, once it's official, I'll move in with you. I just need to get the timing right. That sentence had carved itself into her brain. She never told him she heard it. Instead, she began watching, listening, waiting. Then came the accident. A slip in her marble shower, a fall hard enough to knock her unconscious and temporarily damage her optic nerves. At first, she truly couldn't see. The world had gone grey and fragmented. But days later, as her vision returned, she made a choice to pretend, to say nothing. She told only one person, Dr. Rosaline Reby, her physician, an oldest family friend, who had taken one look at her bruised face and seen the fire behind her eyes. Rosalind hadn't asked questions. She simply nodded, closed the door, and said, "Then let's play it your way." Now, Marcus thought she was helpless. A blind, broken CEO he could maneuver like a puppet. He'd taken over her board meetings, screening her emails, even dictating when and where she could rest. Maya, her loyal assistant, had caught on quickly. The young woman had a gift for reading between the lines and never said more than she needed to. But her steady hand, soft voice, and knowing glances let Amara know she wasn't truly alone. In the past week, Amara had begun putting pieces together. Marcus wasn't just emotionally absent, he was planning something final, he whispered. Too often into his phone, walked out of the room too many times when it rang. Amara noticed a change in his cologne, a faint trace of perfume on his jacket that wasn't hers. She memorized every clue, each one adding fuel to the quiet storm she was building. She wasn't blind, not anymore, And she wasn't broken. She was preparing, because the moment she took the bandages off for good, she wouldn't just be able to see again, she'd make sure the world saw Marcus for who he really was. And then everything he took for granted, her, the company, the image, they'd all come crumbling down. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds like a soft betrayal, painting gold across Samara's gauze-covered face as Marcus entered. The room, she had rehearsed her lines, her tone, the perfect mix of sorrow and acceptance. The doctors said it might be permanent, she whispered, her voice hoarse, perfectly fractured. They're not sure the damage will ever fully heal. Marcus didn't speak at first. He stood near the window, back straight, hands in his pockets, silent in a way that was deafening. When he finally approached, he brushed a hand over her shoulder with all the warmth of a stranger. "We'll figure it out," he said. But there was no weight behind it, no promise, no intention, just empty air. That conversation marked the beginning of a subtle unraveling. Over the next few days, Marcus began to morph. Not in the explosive, shouting kind of way, in the small, telling fractures. He stopped sleeping in the same bed, claiming he didn't want to disturb her recovery. His phone was never far from his hand, and he stopped pretending to care if she noticed him typing furiously late at night. The walls between them, already thin and cracked, finally gave way to something colder, something dangerous. He started taking calls in the same room, even while she was lying right there. "Yeah, she's still down. Playing the blind wife. Bit," he'd mutter with a short laugh. "No, she has no idea." But she did. Every word, every call, every gesture. Then came the woman. Amara smelled her perfume, first floral, sweet, entirely unlike anything she would ever wear. Then the giggle, a voice too bright, too comfortable for a stranger. One afternoon, while Amara lay napping, on the living room couch, the woman tiptoed through the house in heels. Amara could count by their rhythm. They didn't even bother to whisper. She used to run the company from this place. The woman laughed. Hard to believe. Marcus's voice followed, low and cruel. "This is what success looks like. A blind, fragile boss lady in a bathrobe. Honestly, I'm doing her a favor." They both laughed, and Amara's hand tightened. Around the blanket, she didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She just listened every insult, every slip of truth. The final blow came when she heard the printer in the office hum to life. She knew the sound well. It was linked to her secure finance server. The next morning, she heard Marcus flipping through papers at the kitchen island. A pen scratched. He practiced her signature aloud once, then signed 3 documents with a casual flourish. "Perfect," he muttered. She wouldn't even notice if she could see. Amara didn't need more reason to act, but she needed proof. Real, undeniable, legal proof. She called Maya into her room one morning under the pretense of needing help with medication. Once the door was closed, she spoke low and clear. "I can see, Maya. I've been able to see for over a week. I need your help." Maya blinked, startled only for a second, then nodded. "What do you need me to do?" With Maya silent. "Loyalty," they began. Small cameras hidden inside light fixtures, under shelves, inside the casing of an old air purifier. 1 in the office, 1 in the bedroom, 2 in the living room. Every angle covered, no blind spots. Amara gave Maya access to an encrypted folder to store the footage. Nothing local, nothing traceable. For days, Amara continued the charade, the helpless blink, the shaky hand searching for her glass of water, the slow, pained shuffle down the hall. And Marcus continued his descent into arrogance. He brought the woman over again, this time to their bedroom. He took calls where he plotted business transfers, discussed clean exits, even mentioned wiring money out of Amara's accounts. Before the lawyers get involved. He didn't just betray her, he underestimated her. That, she decided, would be his greatest mistake. She didn't confront him, not yet, because she wasn't done listening. Every lie he told became a thread. In the web she was quietly spinning. Every forged document, every insult, every kiss he placed on someone else's neck inside her house was evidence. And soon, that evidence would become fire. But until then, she waited in the dark, watching. Always watching. Amara sat in the center of the storm, watching her world dismantle itself piece by piece, one carefully disguised betrayal at a time. At first, it was subtle, small financial anomalies she might have missed if she hadn't asked Maya to start monitoring their accounts. Funds from her personal portfolio were being siphoned in increments, just small enough to avoid triggering alerts. But then, there were transfers from Cinetech's shell subsidiaries' accounts. She barely glanced at these days, because Marcus had insisted he'd keep things streamlined. What she found turned her stomach. He wasn't just stealing, he was staging a collapse, moving money offshore, redirecting contracts, and masking it all with doctored authorizations bearing her forged signature. The man who once stayed up all night helping her draft her first pitch deck was now cutting her out of the company she had bled for. It didn't end with theft. Amara found the legal documents buried in a shared drive folder Marcus had mistakenly left open on their home network divorce. Papers filed in his name, complete with a falsified medical report declaring her mentally unfit to manage her affairs. The diagnosis was chillingly specific: visual and cognitive impairment due to traumatic brain injury. It was dated 2 days after her accident. Her name was on every page. And yet, none of it was real. He had gone so far as to forge Dr. Rosaline Ives' digital signature, sloppy but dangerous. That was when the fear truly sank in. Marcus wasn't just cheating. He wasn't just manipulating. He was erasing her. She might have screamed, might have shattered every mirror in the house. But she didn't. She couldn't. Her mother's name showed up in the call logs. The next morning, twice, Amara asked Maya to pull the recordings from the hallway camera near the study. And they listened together, Amara hunched over her assistant's laptop, wrapped in a blanket she didn't remember putting on. She won't be able to make decisions for herself, Marcus said calmly, as if discussing the weather. There's neurological damage, permanent. I'll take care of her, Auntie. We'll find a long-term care solution here. I won't let her be alone. Her mother had believed him, of course she had. To the world, Marcus was the doting, polished husband who had sacrificed his career for love. What else could she believe? That night, Amara didn't eat. Couldn't. The food tasted like ash in her mouth. Her limbs ached with fury, but it wasn't just anger that kept her stilt with shame. For years, she had defended him to her friends, to the board, even to herself. She'd turned away from the empty silences, the cold touches, the condescension dressed as care, she had called it. Stress, marriage, fatigue, burnout. Now she saw it clearly. Her marriage had ended a long time ago. What remained was theatre, and she had been the captive audience, eyes wide shut. Maya was furious. You can't keep waiting, she hissed, pacing the length of the kitchen after showing Amara yet another batch of flagged transactions. He's not just trying to take your company, he's trying to take your name, your identity. But Amara, seated at the table with her hands folded and her eyes still bandaged for show, just shook her head. "Not yet," she murmured. "I need to see it through. I need to know the whole truth before I burn it down." Maya didn't understand, not fully, but she obeyed. She always did. Then came the final blow. Marcus arrived home one morning with someone new in tow. He made a show of it, his voice loud enough for Amara to hear from upstairs. "This is Sasha," he announced, as if introducing a business partner. "She's a private care nurse. She'll be staying here starting today, to help manage Amara's condition." Amara sat in her room, still wrapped in silence, listening to the woman's laugh echo up the stairs. The same laugh she'd heard in whispers, in recordings, in the walls of her own home. The mistress, brought into her sanctuary under the guise of medical care. It was a move so arrogant, so disgustingly bold, that Amara nearly broke. But still, she said nothing. She let Marcus come into her room and help her to the bathroom. She let Sasha bring her tea and speak slowly, patronizingly, as if to a child. She memorized every fake smile, every lie, and then, one night, the mask slipped completely. Amara was in bed, wrapped in the silence of her own breath, when Marcus entered her room just past midnight. She heard the door open, his footsteps, the soft rustle of paper. He didn't touch her. He didn't even speak to her. He stood at the window, speaking quietly on the phone. "After the board signs the power of attorney, it's done," he said, his voice calm and satisfied. "She never see anything again, pun intended." He chuckled at his own cruelty. "She'll be comfortable. I'll keep her quiet. You and I can start the real work." Amara lay still. Her hands were curled into fists under the blanket. Her breath was silent, but the tears that slipped from under the gauze were not. They slid hot and bitter down her cheeks, soaking into the pillow as she reached for the one thing within arm's reach, the ring, the platinum band Marcus had given her 10 years ago on a rainy New York rooftop. The promise he had made to protect her, love her, build a life with her. She gripped it so tightly it left a crescent-shaped mark in her palm. She had seen enough. She wasn't just preparing for war. Anymore, she was the war. The storm broke quietly. It began with a single Amara's voice, calm and direct, instructing Maya to gather the board for an emergency session via secure video. No press, no outside advisors. Just the people who mattered, the decision-makers who had trusted her to lead Cinetech with vision and integrity. While Marcus was out for one of his long consulting meetings, Maya executed the plan like clockwork, delivering pre-briefed evidence packets, NDA updates, and links to the video clips Amara had carefully selected. The affair, the forged medical reports, the fake power of a Truni, and most damning of all, Marcus's whispered midnight confession. By the time the meeting began, Amara had already filed asset protection documents through her legal team. Her shares were secured. The company's executive powers were temporarily frozen under emergency protocol, and Marcus Ez, once a trusted spouse and public partner, was about to be exposed not just as a liar but as a criminal. That evening, Amara prepared the house herself. No staff, no Maya, just her and the final move. She dressed simply as soft. Robe, her hair loose, no jewelry except the wedding ring, which she slipped off and placed on the table beside her wineglass. The dining room glowed with soft candlelight, the kind of romantic setup Marcus wouldn't question. He came in humming to himself, his suit jacket draped over one arm, his phone in hand. "You're in a good mood tonight," he said with a smirk, already scrolling through emails. Maybe Sasha was right. A little extra care does wonders. Amara didn't respond. She only gestured to the seat across from her. He sat, glancing at the untouched meal. "You didn't eat?" he asked, amused. "Let me guess, still adjusting to the whole blind thing." He reached for the wine bottle and began to pour. Then Amara took off her sunglasses. The moment was almost theatrical. Marcus didn't register it. At first he looked up mid-sentence, then faltered. The glass tilted slightly, his brow furrowed. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, stared directly into his. Cold, unblinking, unforgiving. You said," he began, voice strangled. Amara tilted her head slightly. "I saw everything." "Marcus." The silence that followed cracked the air in two. He blinked, dropped the bottle, wine spilling onto the linen tablecloth like blood. "What, Amara? I can explain." She reached beside her and clicked the tablet. The first video began to play. Marcus kissing Sasha in the kitchen, laughing while Amara lay upstairs. Then his voice over the hallway recording, mocking her blindness. Then the printer, the signature, the financial papers. Then his midnight whisper, *, she never see anything again, pun intended. * Marcus stood, stumbling backward, knocking into his chair. "This isn't what it looks like," he gasped. I was trying to protect you. I didn't know how, to God, Amara. I still love you. I made mistakes, but we can. You forged my name," she said, voice flat. "You lied to my family. You tried to steal my company. And you brought her into my house, into my bed, while I pretended to be blind just to see who you really were." He was crying now, not in sorrow, in panic. "Please, baby, listen to me. We can fix this. It was temporary, just until you recovered. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I was scared, okay? I didn't think you'd ever do doorbell." Rang. Marcus flinched. 2 officers stepped inside without hesitation, led by amorous lawyer, who had been waiting just out of view. "Marcus Ez," the officer announced, "you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, financial coercion, and violation of corporate trust laws under state and federal jurisdiction." Marcus turned to Amara, face pale, lips trembling. "You're doing this to me. After everything." She stood slowly, walked over to him, and handed him the ring. "No," she said, voice low and unshaken. "You did this. I'm just finally seeing it clearly." They led him out in handcuffs, still shouting her name, still pleading. Amara didn't watch him go. She only turned to the empty dining room, exhaled slowly, and for the first time in weeks closed her eyes because she wanted to. The fallout was swift and public. Marcus S., once praised for his suave charm and supportive partnership with one of tech's most respected CEOs, found himself at the center of a national scandal, as the charges were formally filed: fraud, forgery, corporate theft, and emotional abuse. The recordings Amara had submitted as evidence were strategically leaked online by her legal team, not as an act of revenge, but as a protective measure to control the narrative before he could twist it. The world listened in horror as Marcus's voice echoed across social feeds and headlines marking Amara seducing his mistress in their marital home, plotting her downfall with cold efficiency. His public image crumbled. His so-called consulting clients vanished overnight. His mistress disappeared without a word, and even his own family issued a statement distancing themselves from him, denouncing his actions and offering support to Amara. At Cinetech, the storm surged and then cleared. The board held an emergency vote, unanimously reinstating Amara with full executive authority and offering her a public apology for not questioning Marcus's increasing presence in her affairs. The investors, many of whom had known her from the company's scrappy beginnings, rallied behind her, moved not just by her resilience, but by her ability to outthink a betrayal so meticulously planned. When Amara addressed them publicly for the first time since the scandal, she stood not in a power suit, but in a simple black dress, the bandages long gone and her eyes fierce with clarity. "I pretended to be blind," she said, pausing as the crowd leaned in, "and still saw more than most people ever do. Betrayal doesn't always come with warning signs. It comes with silence, routine, and trust that gets taken for granted. I don't regret seeing the truth. I only regret not looking sooner." But the strength she showed in public didn't erase the quiet ache beneath the surface. In the quiet that followed Marcus's arrest, Amara found herself sitting for long stretches in her own home, not reading reports or drafting memos, but simply staring at the walls she had once shared with someone she thought loved her. She confided in Dr. Roseline Ibe over tea one evening, her voice trembling in ways it never had on a stage. "I stopped being a wife years ago," she admitted. "I was just a symbol, powerful name with a hollow heart beside it." Dr. Ibe didn't offer platitudes. She simply listened, her presence soft and steady. Later, in her sunlit office, Amara broke down with Maya too. No cameras, no speeches, just two women who had walked through fire together. "I kept waiting for him to come back," Amara whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Not physically, just the version of him I first met, the man who believed in me before the money did." Maya didn't respond with words. She just held her hand until the shaking stopped. That summer, Amara announced she was taking a sabbatical. For the first time in over a decade, she handed over interim leadership to her coup and boarded a plane without a laptop or agenda. She flew to Ghana, to a private women's retreat nestled along the Cape Coaster place where she could walk barefoot, journal, meditate, and, as she put it, remember the sound of my own thoughts. For 2 months, she was unreachable. No press, no company updates, just healing. She swam in the ocean at dawn. She danced under the stars with women who had also survived things they never spoke about aloud. She stood before a waterfall and let herself cry without needing to be strong. And when she returned to the world she had once built from scratch, she wasn't the same woman who had left. She was sharper, lighter, whole, not just a CEO, not just a survivor, but a woman who had seen the truth, claimed her power back, and walked through betrayal without losing herself. Amara S. could see everything now, and this time nothing would blind her again. The house greeted her with silence, not the suffocating kind it once held, but a quiet that felt earned, steady, clean. Amara stepped through the front door alone, her movements unhurried. No Sasha's perfume clinging to the air, no Marcus's expensive shoes cluttering the entryway. Just her. The walls, once witnesses to betrayal, now stood tall like old friends still, scarred, but no longer watching in pity. She moved past the master bedroom without looking inside. It had been aired out, scrubbed of every memory, the sheets stripped, the scent replaced with lavender. But that room no longer mattered. She made her way to her private study, the one place Marcus had rarely entered, even during his peak control. It was exactly as she had left it, quiet, sun-drenched, a place of intention. On the desk sat a single envelope, addressed in Marcus's familiar handwriting. It had arrived while she was in Ghana, Maya had told her, but she hadn't opened it then. Now, with no rush, no fear, she slit it open. The letter was brief. I was blind, Amara, not you, and now I see. I don't ask for forgiveness. I only hope you find peace, the kind I never gave you. Amara read it once, then again, but no emotion surged, no ache, no fire, just a hollow recognition of a man who had lost everything by trying to possess what he could never truly hold. She folded the letter neatly, walked to the drawer of her desk, and placed it inside between old contracts and forgotten sketches from her startup days. She closed the drawer with a soft click, her fingers lingering on the handle for just a second before she turned and reached for the light switch. The room dimmed, shadows curling gently around her silhouette. She stood there for a moment, surrounded by the silence she now owned. Sometimes. Her voice echoed silently in her own mind. As she turned to leave, you have to pretend to be powerless, just to find out who's really standing beside you.